Rahul, you gave us a very good presentation on the recycling the plastics back to the main monomers. So there was a presentation to recycle mixed plastics back to different grades of fuel, and there was from polystyrene to styrene. Simple thing I wanted to ask you, what is the percentage wise, how much you are able to recover in a broad way?
So that's a good question. So first let's start with the mixed plastic strategy. So typically speaking, I mean, it depends upon every thermal pyrolysis process or a catalytic pyrolysis process. If you're starting from mixed plastics, your pyrolysis oil yield would be anywhere from 55 weight% all the way to 70 weight%. And I mean, it depends a lot upon the kind of waste plastic you're feeding upstream. Also, it depends upon the operating conditions of your pyrolysis process. So, I mean, now based on that, you can calculate. So you have now 70% yield. So that much pyrolysis oil you have. Now, then how you are utilizing that oil, whether you're going to a cracker to produce a light olefins or whether you're going to a refinery unit, so for example, the FCC, then how much would be the yield of the valuable molecule? That can be calculated, depending upon which asset you are using. So that's one way to look at it. Regarding polystyrene, the story is pretty much the same, but over here the yields can be defined quite good. Again, starting from waste polystyrene, you can expect 75% yield of the crude styrene oil, and that crude styrene oil will contain approximately 60 to 65 weight% of styrene. So, I mean, if I have to really roughly give you a ballpark, so if you're starting, let's say, from 1 ton of waste polystyrene, you produce approximately 0.5 or 0.45 tons of styrene mineral. That's the way to look at it. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, thank you very much. One more small note on it. See, when we produce the polymers, there's a lot of additives which are added in the extrusion process. So once you recycle back all the polymers or plastics, so how do you take out those additives? Because you've told that you can straight away make them into the fuels, but how do you handle those additives?
Uh, Again, a very good question. So yes, you are correct. So you additives as well as plasticizers are added during the plastic manufacturing process. What happens is a lot of them actually translate into impurities like phosphorus or silicon, which you see in those pyrolysis oils coming from the, let's say, the mixed plastic pyrolysis process. Now, as I mentioned in my presentation, you need to remove certain impurities before you can use these oils for downstream, let's, for example, you said for fuels production or even for petrochemical cracker. I mean, for crackers, silicon is a big issue, and you really need to get it down. So, in that hydrotreating process, which we advocate, we take care of most of these impurities, not most, almost all of them. That includes halogens, that includes these additives like silicon or phosphorus. You have trap beds or guard beds for those olefins, which get saturated during the hydrotreating process, oxygenates, which get removed by the STO or the hydrodeoxygenation process, or the sulfur, which gets removed by the STS. So you need to have some sort of impurity removal step, either in the form of hydrotreating, as we advocate, or you can also just consider adsorbent or scavenger beds. But that only works for very small scale. The robust solution is a hydrotreating approach.
One last question on the same topic. You had shown in your polystyrene scheme, there's from the quench column bottom, you are taking out some oligomers, right? Uh, so, what is that percentage of oligomers you removed, and how do you handle them? Can you take them directly to the fuel stock, or you're treating them separately?
You're talking about the polystyrene recycling scheme, right?
Yeah, the bottom of your quench column, you have shown that oligomers are separated.
Yes. So typically, what they do in those oligomers, so there are two ways to go about it. One, in order to boost the yield of the styrene from the overall process, you can recycle it back to the pyrolysis gas. So you can break down those oligomers into even smaller molecules. That's one way. The other way is, I mean, you can utilize, for example, if that is not a possibility because of technical limitation on the pyrolysis process, you can use it as a fuel oil.
Correct.
Similarly, if you notice in our styrene purification scheme, we have heavies coming from our distillation column. We also have residue mother liquor coming from our crystallization section. All these streams can be combined and sent to the fuel oil for energy purpose.
Okay, thank you very much.
Mr. Khandelwal, my name is Jayant Joshi and I am from Engineers India Limited. I have a similar question. We have been doing this pyrolysis of waste plastic and we have developed a process on that also. I have a simple question whether you would be able to take PVC along with the, say, during this conversion. That is first question. Second thing, what will you do of the carbon which you will get ultimately? How do you dispose it off?
Good question. So PV, as we said, as Sulzer as a corporation, we are not positioned in the pyrolysis step, but I will give you, our guidance of what we have seen in the marketplace when it comes to PVC in the pyrolysis section. So PVC is generally limited. Generally a lot of these pyrolysis providers, they try to limit the PVC to around 1 or 2%, not more than that, even less than. And the reasons are quite simple. The chlorine issues downstream, not only on the reactors, but even downstream. So, that's the way it is. So it's pre-sorted. It's a very crude way of explaining, but that's the way of dealing with it. Now, regarding your question on char, that's another interesting thing we have experienced in different pyrolysis processes. So, depending upon the technology of, we have come across 1 or 2 class stage pyrolysis companies. One of them is based in the US. They have been able to come up with a method by which they can continuously recycle the char back to the reactor. So they don't need to, these reactors can be operated in a continuous fashion. Since you have already developed a pyrolysis process within your organization, I'm sure you must be aware that a lot of these reactors, they're actually operated in a semi-batch mode. You let the build up and then you let the other reactor come online, right? So, it depends upon the technology that is being deployed. In one instance, we have seen the char being recycled. In other instances, you have to stop the reactor and take care of it. I hope that answers your question.
No. Do you mean to say that whenever you are recycling your char, you want to increase the profitability in terms of the liquid octane?
Yes. So you can recycle the char to, first of all, to increase the continuity of the process. That has benefits on the capex investment of the unit, number one. Number two, we have also seen instances where certain pyrolysis companies are claiming that they can use this char for the carbon black market. Now, whether it is completely true or not, or whether it's still at speculation, we don't know, because to qualify us for the carbon black feedstock, we need to meet certain properties. It's not so straightforward. The other options we have seen in the market is that people are using this char as for asphalt and roads. So there are different ways to go about it for increasing the profitability of the unit. Either you put it back in the process if you have the technology capability, or you find different streams, like if you can qualify for carbon black or for asphalt to increase the profitability. That's what we have learned. Again, as I said, this is just a guidance. We are not positioned in the pyrolysis space. This is what we are experiencing now.
Thank you very much. Very informative talk.
Else, from my side, I think it was a very insightful presentation by Mr. Khandelwal. Actually, it is the need of the hour, because whole world is, or whole country is going to be garbage with this plastic. So it is a very insightful presentation. I must thank you. At the same time, Mr. Charlie and Mr. Said, they have made a presentation basically for Petro FCC, which is talking about how our production facility should be flexible. Today we need maybe gasoline more, and tomorrow we may be, rather we require more petrochemical products. So in that case, in that way, their presentation is excellent. And if we talk about the petrochemical products or PII index of India, it is less than 5. Whereas world is going 40 to more than 40 PII, or rather 60. There are refineries or facilities are coming which is giving that. If I talk about a little bit of Indian context, see, we are consuming, rather we had been consuming pre-COVID scenario about 215 million metric ton of petroleum products. In the COVID scenario, definitely it come down to 195. Again, we are coming up, and this year probably will be going more than 215 million. Some of the more technologies which we should also think about, that is your, one is Petro FCC, what they have already told. Resid hydrocracker, which is primarily in our country, it is very less, so we should think about the resid hydrocracker also. Then catalytic deoxing unit is also a requirement of the time. One more thing, that is we are talking about the hydrogen unit and reforming. And now the technology is available, it is in fact it is matured also, that you can produce ethanol from your off gas from hydrogen unit. When she was talking about that India is heavily dependent on crude oil import, that is 85% of our 250 million ton capacity across India. So this ethanol, if we can produce from PSA off gas, that will give a lot of foreign exchange saving. In India, we have a very shortage of acetic acid. Carbon capture and utilization sequestration, that is also not a very, as on date, it is a requirement of the hour, but it is not that developed. But there is in India, we have a lot of petrochemical products requirement, and we are bringing out from other part of the world. And if I give some of the names where India is importing, each case more than 1,000 crore rupees. These are your MEG or PTA or LLDP or HDP or polypropylene or polyvinyl. There are many products we are importing from abroad, and each case it is more than 1,000 crore. So potential of India is very, very high. So we should think about in that direction. So this is a business opportunity. I think this will help every one of us. With these few words, thank you. Thank you for making good presentation, Mr. Khandelwal, Mr. Charlia, and Mr. Seth. Thank you very much.